The Sicilian Mafia Commission, Italian, Commissione Provinciale, known as Commissione or Cupola, is a body of leading Sicilian Mafia members to decide on important questions concerning the actions of, and settling disputes within the Sicilian Mafia or Cosa Nostra. It is composed of representatives of a mandamento, a district of 3 geographically contiguous mafia families that are called capomandamento or rappresentante. The commission is not a central government of the mafia, but a representative mechanism for consultation of independent mafia families who decide by consensus. Contrary to the widespread image presented by the media, these superordinate bodies of coordination cannot be compared with the executive boards of major legal firms. Their power is intentionally limited, and it would be entirely wrong to see in the Cosa Nostra a centrally managed, internationally active mafia holding company, according to criminologist Letizia Paoli. The jurisdiction extends over a province. Each province of Sicily has some kind of a commission, except Messina, Syracuse and Ragusa. Initially the idea was that the family bosses would not sit on the commission, but in order to prevent imbalances of power, some other prominent member would be appointed instead. However, that rule was not obeyed from the start. According to the Pentito Tommaso Busetta, the commission first came into being to settle disputes between members of the various families and their bosses in order to discipline members of each family. Only later did its function expand to the regulation of the activities of all families in a province. Exposure. The first time the existence of such a commission filtered out to the rest of the world was in 1965 during the inquiry into the first Mafia war by Judge Cesare Terranova. Terranova based himself on a confidential report of the Carabinieri of May 28, 1963, where a confidential informant revealed the existence of a commission composed of 15 persons, 6 from Palermo City and the rest from towns in the province, each with the rank of boss of either a group or a mafia family. Judge Terranova did not believe that the existence of a commission meant that the mafia was a tightly unified structure. In 1973, Leonardo Vitali, a lower-level mafioso, revealed the existence of the commission, but his revelations were discarded at the time and Vitali judged insane. The existence of the commission was first established by a court of law during the Maxi trial in 1986-87. The groundwork for the Maxi trial was done at the preliminary investigative phase by Palermo's anti-mafia pool, created by Judge Rocco Cinici, in which the judges Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino worked as well. It was Tommaso Busetta who definitively revealed the existence and workings of the commission, when he became a state witness and started to give evidence to Judge Giovanni Falcone in 1984. It enabled Falcone to argue that Cosa Nostra was a unified hierarchical structure ruled by a commission and that its leaders, who normally would not dirty their hands with criminal acts, could be held responsible for criminal activities that were committed to benefit the organization. The existence and functioning of the commission was confirmed by the first-degree conviction. The mafia was identified with the Cosa Nostra organization, and defined a unique, pyramidal and apex-type organization, provincially directed by a commission or cupola and regionally by an interprovincial organism, in which the head of the Palermo Commission has a hegemonic role. This premise became known as the Busetta theorem. That vision of Cosa Nostra was not immediately recognized. Other magistrates, in particular Corrado Carnevale, also known as the sentence killer, of the Supreme Court, Corte di Cassazione, sustained that mafia associations are autonomous groups, not connected amongst themselves, and therefore, the collective responsibility for the commission members did not exist. Carnevale's view prevailed at the appeal of the Maxi trial, but the theorem was confirmed upheld by the final sentence of the Supreme Court in January 1992. Carnevale did not preside the court that did a ruling. In the meantime, the anti-mafia pool of Palermo was dismantled and Judge Rocco Cinici had been murdered in 1983. Many Mafia bosses were condemned to life in prison, and Cosa Nostra reacted furiously and started a series of revenge killings because of the Supreme Court sentence. The Mafia had counted on the politicians Salvo Lima and Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti to appoint Corrado Carnevale to review the sentence. Carnevale had overturned many Mafia convictions on the slenderest of technicalities previously. Carnevale, however, had to withdraw due to pressure from the public and from Giovanni Falcone, who at the time had moved to the Ministry of Justice. Falcone was backed by the Minister of Justice Claudio Martelli despite the fact that he served under Prime Minister Andreotti. In March 1992, Lima was killed, followed by Falcone and Paolo Borsellino later that year. Interprovincial Commission beyond the provincial level, details are vague. According to the Pentito Tommaso Busetta, an interprovincial commission was created in the 1970s, while the Pentito Antonino Calder claims that there had been a rappresentante regionale in the 1950s even before the commissions and the Capimandamento were created. The rappresentante regionale in those days was a certain Andrea Fazio from Trapani. The Interprovincial or Regional Commission was probably set up in February 1975 on the instigation of Giuseppe Calder from Catania, who became its first secretary. The other members were Gaetano Badalamenti for Palermo, Giuseppe Setcassi, Agrigento, Colabucci Salato, Trapani, Angelo Mangiovi, and Giuseppe Di Cristina, called Niceta. According to the Pentito Leonardo Messina, the Regional Commission in 1992 was made up by Salvatore Riina for the province of Palermo, Nito Santapaola for the province of Catania, Salvatore Seda for the province of Enna, Giuseppe Piggio Madogna for the province of Caltanissetta, Antonio Ferro for the province of Agrigento, and Mariano Agart for the province of Trapani. History and rules. According to Tommaso Busetta, the first Sicilian Mafia Commission for the province of Palermo was formed after a series of meetings between top American and Sicilian mafiosi that took place in Palermo between October 12–16, 1957, in the Hotel del Palm and the Spano Seafood Restaurant. U.S. gangsters Joseph Bonanno and Lucky Luciano suggested their Sicilian counterparts to form a commission, following the example of the American Mafia that had formed their commission in the 1930s. The Sicilians agreed with their suggestion, and Busetta, Gaetano Badalamenti and Salvatore Greco Siscaitadu set the ground rules. Sometime in early 1958, the Sicilian Mafia formed its first Mafia Commission. It was formed among Mafia families in the province of Palermo, which had the highest concentration of Koch Mafia families, approximately 46. Salvatore Siscaitadu Greco was appointed as its first secretary or rappresentante regionale, essentially a primus inter pares, the first among equals. Initially, the secretary had very little power. His task was simply to organize the meetings. Before that time, the Mafia families were not connected by a collective structure. According to Judge Cesare Terranova, they were a mosaic of small republics with topographical borders marked by tradition. In the days before the commission, coordination inside Cosa Nostra was ensured by informal meetings among the most influential members of the most powerful families. In fact, the decision to form a commission was a formalization of these occasional meetings into a permanent, collegial body. Originally, to avoid excessive concentration of power in the hands of a few individuals, it was decided that only men of honor holding no leadership position within their own family, in other words simple soldiers, could be appointed as members of the commission. That rule was immediately dropped due to the opposition of some family bosses who threatened to abandon the project from the start. The commission had two main competencies. The first was to settle conflicts among Mafia families and single members, and to enforce the most serious violations of the normative codes of Cosa Nostra. Second, the commission was entrusted with the regulation of the use of violence. It had exclusive authority to order murder of police officials, prosecutors and judges, politicians, journalists and lawyers, because these killings could provoke retaliation by law enforcement. To limit internal conflicts, it was agreed that each family boss had to ask the commission's authorization before killing any member of another family. Until the early 1980s, the commission's competencies were often disregarded due to its collegial character and the wide autonomy for the family bosses. Only when Toto Riina, Bernardo Provenzano and the Corleonesi imposed their rule, the commission became a central leadership body. However, the commission in fact lost its autonomy and became a mere enforcement body that endorsed the decisions made by Riina and Provenzano. The first commission, according to Busetta, the first commission numbered not many more than 10, and the number was variable. Among the members of the first commission in the province of Palermo were Salvatore Greco, Sicilian for the Ciaculli Mandamento, Palermo; Antonio Matranga for the Risottano Mandamento, Palermo; Mariano Troia for the San Lorenzo Mandamento, Palermo; Michele Cavateo for the Acquasanta Mandamento, Palermo; Calcedonio di Pisa for the Nos Mandamento, Palermo; Salvatore La Barbera for the Palermo Central Mandamento, Cesare Manzella for the Senesi Mandamento, Giuseppe Pano for the Casteldoccia Mandamento, Antonio Salamone for the San Giuseppe Gato Mandamento, Lorenzo Motisi for the Pagliarelli Mandamento, Palermo; Salvatore Mano for the Bocca di Falco Mandamento, Palermo; Francesco Sorsi for the Santa Maria di Gesù Mandamento, Palermo; Mario di Girolamo for the Corso Calatafimi Mandamento, Palermo. The commission, however, was not able to prevent the outbreak of a violent mafia war in 1963. Casus Belli was a heroin deal gone wrong, and the subsequent killing of Calcedonio di Pisa on December 26, 1962, who was held responsible. Instead of settling the dispute, the commission became part of the internal conflict. On June 30, 1963, a car bomb exploded near Greco's house in Ciaculli, killing 7 police and military officers sent to defuse it after an anonymous phone call. The outrage over the Ciaculli massacre changed the Mafia war into a war against the Mafia. It prompted the first concerted anti-Mafia efforts by the state in post-war Italy. The Sicilian Mafia Commission was dissolved, and of those mafiosi who had escaped arrest, many went abroad. Sicilian Greco fled to Caracas in Venezuela. According to Tommaso Busetta, it was Michele Cavateo, the boss of the Acquasanta quarter of Palermo, who was responsible for the Ciaculli bomb, and possibly the murder of boss Calcedonio di Pisa in late 1962. Cavateo had lost out to the Grecos in a war of the wholesale market in the mid-1950s. Cavateo killed Di Pisa, and the knowledge that the La Barberas would be blamed by the Grecos and war would be the result. He kept fueling the war through other bomb attacks and killings. Cavateo was backed by other mafia families who resented the growing power of the Mafia Commission to the detriment of individual mafia families. Cavateo was killed on December 10, 1969, in the so-called Via Lazio massacre in Palermo as retaliation for the events in 1963. According to Busetta and Grado, the composition of the hit squad was a clear indication that the killing had been sanctioned collectively by all the major Sicilian mafia families. Not only did it include Calogero Bagarella and Bernardo Provenzano from Corleone, and members of Stefano Bontade's family in Palermo, but also a soldier of Giuseppe Di Cristina's family on the other end of Sicily in Rizi. Triumvirate. The crackdown on the Mafia resulted in a period of relative peace, a pax mafiosa, while many mafiosi were held in jail or were banished internally. The verdict of the trial of the 114 against the Mafia in Catanzaro in December 1968 resulted in many acquittals or short sentences for criminal association. The vast majority of mafiosi had to be released given the time they had already spent in captivity while awaiting trial. Under these circumstances, the Sicilian Mafia Commission was revived in 1970. It would consist of 10 members, but initially it was ruled by a triumvirate consisting of Gaetano Badalamenti, Stefano Bontate and the Corleonesi boss Luciano Leggio, although it was Salvatore Riina who actually would represent the Corleonesi, substituting Leggio, who was on the run until his arrest in 1974. In 1974 the full commission was restored under the leadership of Gaetano Badalamenti. Among the members were Gaetano Badalamenti for the Senesi Mandamento, Stefano Bontate for the Santa Maria di Gesù Mandamento, Palermo Luciano Leggio for the Corleone Mandamento, substituted by Salvatore Riina since Leggio was arrested in 1974, Antonio Salamone for the San Giuseppe Gato Mandamento, often substituted by Bernardo Brusco, father of Giovanni Brusco, Rosario Di Maggio for the Passo di Ragano Mandamento, Palermo Salvatore Scaglione for the Nos Mandamento, Palermo Rosario Riccobono for the Pardana Mandamento, Palermo Giuseppe Callo for the Porta Nuova Mandamento, Palermo Filippo Giacalone for the San Lorenzo Mandamento, Palermo Michele Greco for the Ciacalli Mandamento, Palermo Ninjarachi for the Partinico Mandamento. Several pentiti, such as Salvatore Canseme, Francesco Di Carlo and Giovanni Brusco, say that Giuseppe Farinella, for the Gangi San Mauro Castelverde Mandamento, Francesco Intile for the Cacamo Mandamento, and Antonio Mineo for the Bagheria Mandamento, were or became members as well. During these years, tensions between different coalitions within the commission increased. In this period, the commission was increasingly dominated by the coalition led by Toto Riina and Bernardo Provenzano that was opposed by Gaetano Badalamenti and Stefano Bontate. Riina and Provenzano secretly formed an alliance of mafiosi in different families, cutting across clan divisions, in defiance of the rules concerning loyalty in Cosa Nostra. This secretive interfamily group became known as the Corleonesi. The wing headed by Badalamenti and Bontate defended the existing balance of power between the single mafia families and the commission. Thanks to a shrewd manipulation of the rules and elimination of its most powerful rivals, in particular the killings in 1978 of Giuseppe Calderone and Giuseppe Di Cristina, members of the Interprovincial Commission, the Corleonesi coalition was able to increase its power within the commission. Their rivals were overwhelmed and lost any power to strike back. Beside using violence, the Corleonesi also imposed their supremacy by shrewdly exploiting the competence of the commission, the power to suspend leaders of a family and to name a reggente, a temporary boss. The 1978 commission. In 1978, Gaetano Badalamenti was expelled from the commission and as head of his family. Michele Greco replaced him as the secretary of the commission. Badalamenti's removal marked the end of a period of relative peace and signified a major change in the mafia itself. In 1978, the commission was composed by Michele Greco for the Ciacalli Mandamento, Palermo, acting as the secretary Salvatore Riina, for the Corleone Mandamento, often accompanied by Bernardo Provenzano, Stefano Bontate for the Santa Maria di Gesù Mandamento, Palermo, Salvatore Inzerillo for the Passo di Ragano Mandamento, Palermo, Giuseppe Callo for the Porta Nuova Mandamento, Palermo, Antonio Salamone for the San Giuseppe Gato Mandamento, often substituted by Bernardo Brusco, father of Giovanni Brusco, because Salamone resided in Sao Paulo in Brazil. Salvatore Scaglione for the Nos Mandamento, Palermo, Rosario Riccobono for the Pardana Mandamento, Palermo, Francesco Madogna for the Risottana Mandamento, Palermo, Ninjarachi for the Partinico Mandamento, Calogero Pizzuto representing Agrigento, Ignazio Motisi for the Pagliarelli Mandamento, Palermo. The commission was divided between the Corleonesi, Riina, Callo, Madogna, Brusco, Geraci, Greco Scarpazza, Motisi and probably Scaglione as well, and the group Bontate, Inzerillo and Pizzuto. A third group, Michele Greco, Riccobono and Salamone, were not hostile to the group of Bontate but were against Gaetano Badalamenti. While the more established mafia families in the city of Palermo refrained from openly killing authorities because that would attract too much police attention, the Corleonesi deliberately killed to intimidate the authorities in such a way that the suspicion fell on their rivals in the commission. In 1979, Pino Greco from Ciaculli, also known as Scarpuzza and Graiana's favorite hitman, entered the commission as well. Instead of avoiding conflict, the commission increasingly became an instrument in the unfolding power struggle that eventually led to the quasi-dictatorship of Toto Riina. Members of the commission were no longer freely selected by the provinces, but were chosen on the basis of their allegiance to Riina's faction, and eventually were only called to legitimize decisions that had already been taken elsewhere. Second Mafia War. The Second Mafia War raged from 1981–1983. On April 23, 1981, Bontate was machine-gunned to death in his car in Palermo. Bontate's close ally, Salvatore Anzirillo, was killed 3 weeks later with the same Kalashnikov. The Corleonesi slaughtered the ruling families of the Palermo Mafia to take control of the organization while waging a parallel war against Italian authorities and law enforcement to intimidate and prevent effective investigations and prosecutions. More than 200 mafiosi were killed and many simply disappeared. In 1982, the commission members were Salvatore Riina and Bernardo Provenzano for the Coral I Mandamento, Giuseppe Callo for the Porta Nuova Mandamento, Palermo, Michele Greco for the Ciaculli Mandamento, Palermo, Giovanni Scaduto for the Bagheria Mandamento, Rosario Riccobono for the Partana Mandamento, Palermo, Francesco Madogna for the Risottana Mandamento, Palermo, Andrea Di Carlo for the Altofonte Mandamento, Ninjarachi for the Partinico Mandamento, Bernardo Brusca for the San Giuseppe Gato Mandamento, Mariano Agart for the Mazzara del Vallo Mandamento, province of Trapani, Pino Greco of Sicily. The commission was now dominated by Riina and Provenzano. More and more the independence of mafia families was superseded by the authoritarian rule of Riina. Nor did the killing end when the main rivals of the Corleonesi were defeated. Whoever could challenge Riina or had lost their usefulness was eliminated. Rosario Riccobono and a dozen men of his clan were killed in November 1982. Sometime in September 1985, Pino Greco was murdered in his home. He was shot to death by his two fellow mafiosi and supposed friends, Vincenzo Puccio and Giuseppe Lucchese, although the orders came from Riina, who had felt Greco was getting too ambitious and too independently minded for his liking. The commission in fact lost its autonomy and became a mere enforcement body that endorsed the decisions made by Riina and Provenzano and their close group of allies. According to Buscetta, with the power gained by the Corleonesi and their allies, the traditional organizational structures had a purely formal value, the decisions were taken before, and the commission was nothing but a faithful executor of orders. Meanwhile, new mandamenti were formed in 1983, whose members entered the commission. Raphael Ganci for the Nos Mandamento, Giuseppe Giacomo Gambino for the San Lorenzo Mandamento, Matteo Motisi for the Pagliarelli Mandamento, and Salvatore Buscemi for the Passo di Ragano Boccatefalco Mandamento. In 1986–87, the Santa Maria di Gesù Mandamento, the former fiefdom of Stefano Bontate, was reinstated, represented by Pietro Aglieri. Since the arrests as a result of the revelations of pentiti such as Tommaso Buscetta, Salvatore Contorno, Francesco Marino Manoia and Antonino Calderone, and the Maxi trial in the 1980s, many commission members ended up in jail. They were substituted by a so-called sostituto or reggente. The 1992 Commission. In 1992, the commission that decided to kill the politician and Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti's right-hand man on Sicily, Salvo Lima, and the judges Giovanni Falconi and Paolo Borsellino was composed of Salvatore Riina and Bernardo Provenzano for the Coral I Mandamento, Salvatore Cansemi for the Porta Nuova Mandamento, Palermo, substituting Giuseppe Callo, who was in prison, Raphael Ganci for the Nos Mandamento, Palermo, Palermo Matteo Motisi for the Pagliarelli Mandamento, Palermo Salvatore Biondino and or Mariano Tullio Troia for the San Lorenzo Mandamento, Palermo, substituting Giuseppe Giacomo Gambino who was in prison, Pietro Aglieri and Carlo Greco for the Gradana Santa Maria di Gesù Mandamento, Palermo, the brothers Giuseppe Graviano and Filippo Graviano for the Brancaccio Giaculli Mandamento, substituting Giuseppe Lucchese who was in prison, Francesco Madogna for the Risottana Mandamento, Palermo, Michelangelo La Barbara for the Passo di Ragano Boccatefalco Mandamento, Palermo, substituting Salvatore Buscemi who was in prison, Giuseppe Farinella for the Gangi San Mauro Castelverde Mandamento, Giovanni Brusqua for the San Giuseppe Gato Mandamento, substituting his father Bernardo Brusqua who was in prison, Giuseppe Montalto for the Villabate Mandamento, substituting his father Salvatore Montalto who was in prison, Antonino Dufra for the Cacamo Mandamento, Ninjaracci for the Partinico Mandamento, Benedetto Spera for the Belmont Mezzagno Mandamento. Provenzano's new Mafia. Provenzano proposed a new, less violent Mafia strategy instead of the terrorist bombing campaign in 1993 against the state to get them to back off in their crackdown against the Mafia after the murders of anti-Mafia prosecutors Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino. Following the months after Raiana's arrest in January 1993, there were a series of bombings by the Corleonesi against several tourist spots on the Italian mainland, the Via dei Giorgio Fili in Florence, in Milan and the Piazza San Giovanni in Laterano and Via San Teodoro in Rome, which left 10 people dead and 93 injured, as well as severe damage to centers of cultural heritage such as the Uffizi Gallery. Leo Luca Bagarella, Raiana's successor, was captured on June 24, 1995. Bagarella was arrested, having been a fugitive for 4 years. Provenzano then took the reins, establishing new guidelines: patience, compartmentalization, coexistence with state institutions, and systematic infiltration of public finance. The diplomatic Provenzano tried to stem the flow of pentiti by not targeting their families, only using violence in case of absolute necessity. Provenzano reportedly re-established the old Mafia rules that had been abolished by Toto Riina. Together with Riina and Leo Luca Bagarella, he was ruling the Corleonesi faction. Giovanni Brusqua, one of Raiana's hitmen who personally detonated the bomb that killed Falcone, and later became an informant after his 1996 arrest, has offered a controversial version of the capture of Toto Riina, a secret deal between Carabinieri officers, secret agents and Cosa Nostra bosses tired of the dictatorship of the Corleonesi. According to Brusqua, Provenzano sold Riina in exchange for the valuable archive of compromising material that Riina held in his apartment in Via Bernini 52 in Palermo. The Sicilian Mafia had been divided between those bosses who support a hard line against the Italian state, mainly bosses who are in prison such as Salvatore Toto Raiana, deceased since 2017, and Leo Luca Bagarella, and those who support the more moderate strategy of Provenzano. The incarcerated bosses are currently subjected to harsh controls on their contact with the outside world, limiting their ability to run their operations from behind bars under the Article 41 bis prison regime. Antonino Dufra, a close confidant of Provenzano, turned pentito shortly after his capture in April 2002, alleges that in 1993, Cosa Nostra had direct contact with representatives of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi while he was planning the birth of Forza Italia. The deal that he says was alleged to have been made was a repeal of 41 bis, among other anti-mafia laws, in return for delivering electoral gains in Sicily. Dufra's declarations have not been confirmed. During a court appearance in July 2002, Leo Luca Bagarella suggested unnamed politicians had failed to maintain agreements with the Mafia over prison conditions. "We are tired of being exploited, humiliated, harassed and used as merchandise by political factions," he said. Nevertheless, the Italian parliament, with the support of Forza Italia, subsequently prolonged the enforcement of 41 bis, which was to expire in 2002. for another 4 years and extended it to other crimes such as terrorism. However, according to one of Italy's leading magazines, L'Espresso, 119 mafiosi, one-fifth of those incarcerated under the 41-bis regime, have been released on an individual basis. Division and rivalry. In 2002, a rift within Cosa Nostra became clear. On the one hand, there were the hardline Corleonesi in jail, led by Toto Riina and Leo Luca Bagarella, and on the other, the more moderate Palermitani, led by Provenzano and Antonino Dufra, Salvatore Lo Piccolo and Matteo Messina Denaro. Apparently the arrest of Dufra in April 2002 was made possible by an anonymous phone call that seems to have been made by loyalists to the Mafia hardliners Riina and Bagarella. The purpose was to send a message to Provenzano. The incarcerated bosses wanted something to be done about the harsh prison conditions, in particular the relaxation of the 41-bis incarceration regime, and were believed to be orchestrating a return to violence while serving multiple life sentences. Targets were to have been Marcello Dell'Etri and former Defense Minister Cesare Previti, both close advisors of then Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, according to a leaked report of the intelligence service SISDE. Riina and Bagarella felt betrayed by political allies in Rome, who had promised to help pass laws to ease prison conditions and reduce sentences for its jailed members in exchange for Mafia support at the polls. The SISDE report says they believe that hits on either of the two embattled members of Berlusconi's Forza Italia party, each under separate criminal indictments, would have been less likely to provoke the kind of public outrage and police crackdown that followed the 1992 murders of the widely admired Sicilian prosecutors Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino. According to press reports, when Provenzano was moved to the high-security prison in Terni, Toto Riina's son Giovanni Riina, who has been sentenced to life imprisonment for 3 murders, yelled that Provenzano was a spuro, a popular Italian pejorative expression for a police officer, when Provenzano entered the cell block. The pentito Antonino Dufra has said in October 2005 that there had been rumors within Cosa Nostra that Provenzano was an informer for the Carabinieri while he was on the run. After Provenzano's arrest. After the arrest of Bernardo Provenzano on April 11, 2006, on the same day as Romano Prodi's victory in the 2006 Italian general election against Silvio Berlusconi, several mafiosi were mentioned as Provenzano's successor. Among the rivals were Matteo Messina Denaro, from Castelvetrano and the province of Trapani, Salvatore Lo Piccolo, boss of Tommaso Natalieri and the Mandamento of San Lorenzo and Palermo, and Domenico Raccuglia from Altofonte. Provenzano allegedly nominated Messina Denaro in one of his pizzini, small slips of paper used to communicate with other mafiosi to avoid phone conversations, found at Provenzano's hideout. This presupposes that Provenzano has the power to nominate a successor, which is not unanimously accepted among Mafia observers. The Mafia today is more of a federation and less of an authoritarian state, according to anti-Mafia prosecutor Antonio Ingroia of the Direzione Distrettuale Antimafia (DDA) of Palermo, referring to the previous period of authoritarian rule under Salvatore Riina. Provenzano established a kind of directorate of about 4 to 7 people who met very infrequently, only when necessary, when there were strategic decisions to make. According to Ingroia, in an organization like the Mafia, a boss has to be one step above the others, otherwise it all falls apart. It all depends on if he can manage consensus and if the others agree or rebel. Provenzano guaranteed a measure of stability because he had the authority to quash internal disputes. Among the members of the directorate were Salvatore Lo Piccolo, Antonino Dufra from Cacamo, Benedetto Spera from Belmont Mezzagno, Salvatore Ranella from Trabia, Giuseppe Balsano from Monreale, Matteo Messina Denaro from Castelvetrano, Vincenzo Vergla from Trapani, and Andrea Mangiaracina from Mazzara del Vallo. After the arrests of Benedetto Spera, Vincenzo Verga, both in 2001, and Antonino Dufra in 2002, who decided to cooperate with the authorities. The leadership of Cosa Nostra was in the hands of the fugitives Bernardo Provenzano, Salvatore Lo Piccolo and Matteo Messina Denaro. Following Provenzano's capture in April 2006, Italy's intelligence service report warned of emerging tensions between mafia groups as a result of Provenzano's failure to designate either Salvatore Lo Piccolo or Matteo Messina Denaro as his successor. The Direzione Investigativa Anti-Mafia (DIA) cautioned that the capture of Provenzano could potentially present mafia leaders an opportunity to return to violence as a means of expressing their power. 2 months after Provenzano's arrest, on June 20, 2006, authorities issued 52 arrest warrants against the top echelon of Cosa Nostra in the city of Palermo. Operation Gotha study of the Pizzini showed that Provenzano's joint deputies in Palermo were Salvatore Lo Piccolo and Antonio Rotolo, capo mandamento of Pagliarelli. In a message referring to an important decision for Cosa Nostra, Provenzano told Rotolo, "It's up to you, me and Lo Piccolo to decide this thing." The investigations showed that Rotolo had built a kind of federation within the Mafia, comprising 13 families grouped in 4 clans. His right-hand men were Antonio Cinna, who used to be the personal physician of Salvatore Riina and Provenzano, and the builder Francesco Bonura. The city of Palermo was ruled by this triumvirate, replacing the commission whose members are all in jail. What emerged as well was that the position of Salvatore Lo Piccolo was not undisputed. Authorities said they avoided the outbreak of a genuine war inside Cosa Nostra. The first clash would have been between Rotolo and Lo Piccolo. What sparked off the crisis was a request from the Inzerillo family, one of the clans whose leaders, among them Salvatore Inzerillo, were killed by the Corleonesi during the Second Mafia War in the 1980s and which are now in exile in the United States. Rotolo had passed a death sentence on Lo Piccolo and his son, Sandro, even before Provenzano's arrest, and even procured the barrels of acid that are used to dissolve the bodies of slain rivals. Reconstitution thwarted in December 2008, an attempt to reconstitute a new commission was foiled when 94 mafiosi were arrested after a 9-month investigation dubbed Operation Perseus, Perseo in Italian, after the Greek mythological hero Perseus who beheaded Medusa. From tapped phone conversations and surveillance, police had obtained a full list of those present and those who had sent their apologies, as well as details of the issues discussed and the decisions adopted. The object, as one tapped mafioso put it, was to re-establish Cosa Nostra in the old style, with a single all-powerful boss, a capo dei capi. Benedetto Capizzi, a 65-year-old boss from Villa Grazia, had been nominated as the possible head of the commission. Among the other members were other historical Cosa Nostra bosses, such as Gerlando Alberti, Gregorio Algarginto from San Giuseppe Gaeto, Giovanni Lipari, Gaetano Fidanzati, Giuseppe Scaduto from Bavaria and Salvatore Lombardo, the 87-year-old boss from Montelepri. Many of those arrested had recently been released from prison on health grounds, and were serving out their sentences under house arrest. Among the younger bosses were Gianni Nicci, the young and upcoming boss from Pagliarelli, and Giuseppe Biondino, the son of Salvatore Biondino, who had been Raina's driver. A preliminary summit meeting had been held on November 14, 2008, with Lopresti, Scaduto, Capizzi, and also Nicci. The new commission had the blessing of the old bosses Toto Riina and Bernardo Provenzano, as well as Matteo Messina Denaro, the boss from the province of Trapani. Not everyone agreed, however. Gaetano Lopresti from the Portanuova family objected to the choice of Capizzi as the new head. He committed suicide after his arrest. Police feared the outbreak of a new mafia war and decided to interfere. Nicci and Fidanzati escaped the arrests, but were captured later. After the death of Rihanna on the 17th of November 2017, Sedimo Mineo was elected the new head on the 29th of May 2018 until his arrest on the 4th of December 2018. Composition and leadership. Mandamentos and bosses. References. R. Lakechi, Pino, 1988. Gli uomini del Dicenor. La Mafia Siciliana nella vita del Gran Pentito Antonino Calder 1, Milan, Mondadori ISBN, 88-04-353226-0. Dickey, John, 2004. Cosa Nostra. A History of the Sicilian Mafia, London, Cornet, ISBN, 0-340-82435-2. Gambetta, Diego, 1993. The Sicilian Mafia. The Business of Private Protection, London, Harvard University Press, ISBN, 0-674-80742-1. Padovani, Marcel and Giovanni Falconi, 1992. Men of Honor. The Truth About the Mafia, HarperCollins, ISBN, 1-85702-024-3. Paoli, Letizia, 2003. Mafia Brotherhoods. Organized Crime, Italian Style, New York, Oxford University Press ISBN, 0-19-515724-9. Review. Schneider, Jane T. and Peter T. Schneider, 2003. Reversible Destiny, Mafia, Anti-Mafia, and the Struggle for Palermo, Berkeley, University of California Press ISBN, 0-520-23609-2. Servadio, Gaia, 1976. Mafioso. A History of the Mafia from its Origins to the Present Day, London, Sacker and Warburg ISBN, 0-440-55104-8. Sterling, Claire, 1990. Octopus. How the Long Reach of the Sicilian Mafia Controls the Global Narcotics Trade, New York, Simon & Schuster, ISBN, 0-671-73402-4.